Hey, let me thank you for being willing to go through the training to become a mentor for a group of praying churches. Working with prayer leaders, others, you may not feel adequate. That's probably a good thing. Neither do I. But we're going to learn together. This session is about the specific objective, the purpose of the prayer leadership mentoring process. Hey, I ran across a quote. This is pretty stinging. Men who are reluctant about prayer don't belong in places of leadership in the church. That's Ivan French. It's pretty potent, huh? In fact, Samuel Prime once said that if you don't plow in your closet, you won't reap in your pulpit. So let's not just talk about learning about prayer, learning how to transform our churches into houses of prayer. Let's understand that prayer is the very context and heart of all we're doing. In fact, P.T. Forsyth said, prayer is the atmosphere of revelation. In the strict and central sense of that word, it's the climate in which God's manifestation burst into open inspiration. I don't expect anything to come out of our mentoring process if you and I, as leaders, mentors, teachers, aren't people of prayer. And if there isn't a spirit of prayer about our learning groups and our learning process. Here's our mission. We want to create a context that engages prayer leadership teams of Church of God congregations in a mutual experience of encouragement and learning on their journey of bringing prayer to the heart of all they do. Let me say it again. We want to create a context that encourages not just prayer leaders, but prayer leadership teams of Church of God congregations in a mutual experience of encouragement and learning on their journey of bringing prayer to the heart of all they do. Specifically, we want to embrace what you'll hear me say over and over again, what you'll find throughout this manual, the four-dimensional model of prayer ministries. Praying homes, pervasive prayer in all of church life, every ministry a praying ministry, engaging, identifying, teaming, directing, nurturing healthy intercessors, and then taking all of our prayer energy and turning it outward, a mission field near and a mission field far, prayed for community, city, nation, and world. And that's accomplished by using the prayer, care, share theology. The commitment to pray, Timothy 2. Pray for men everywhere, beginning with kings and those in authority, that we might live peaceable lives, that all men might be saved. The care piece. Love God with all of your heart and your neighbor as yourself. The share piece. Preach the gospel everywhere. Baptizing men, inducting them into the kingdom, discipling them. Prayer, care, share. Here's our vision. A network of congregations that are intentionally and systematically and yet in a tempered way growing praying churches in collaboration with other congregations with a similar vision, all to infuse a new spirit of personal and corporate spiritual vigor into the lives of members and families. We're networking together, we're intentionally, we're systematically, and yet in a tempered way, we're growing praying churches in collaboration with one another, infusing a new spirit of personal and corporate vigor into the lives of members and families, staff and leaders, intercessors. Our goal to see Christ incarnated and then proclaimed to a watching world. And all of this unwrapped, not only in an isolated church, but in the movement we call the Church of God. Ben Jennings, who is the International Coordinator of Prayer for Campus Crusade, reminds us that prayer and theology both deal with God, but from different perspectives. Theology is like a telescope. You view the distant stars of God's quality, but prayer is like a space vehicle. It lets you move among His qualities. Theology studies God. Prayer engages God. We want our people to stop being observers on Sunday morning. We want them to engage God 7 days a week and come to church out of that. What are our specific purposes for this mentoring group? Here they are. Number one, mutual learning. We want to create a context for mutual learning for pastors and prayer leaders for the purpose of the growth and application of prayer and prayer ministry in the context of the local church. Number two, we want to explore all the resources that are available to maximize the utilization of primary resources, those that are created by the Church of God, prayer ministries, the prayer leaders resource notebook, the manual, the toolkit. This loose leaf 3-ring binder is full of all kind of practical data, 750 pages of it. The prayer leader's handbook is 300 pages, a perfect bound book, more substantive looks at prayer. There is the book, Transforming Your Church into a House of Prayer. It's a perfect bound book that has really is the basic template for this process. It's a blue book. You can get it. It's in the toolkit. And then, of course, there's the prayer leader's resource book pack, a collection of classic prayer books and helps at a bargain price. Now, here's number three. We want to encourage and resource one another. At your tables, when your mentoring groups come together quarterly, here's what will happen. You'll discover and share with one another resources that you've found. What's working, what's not working. You'll figure out how to help one another. And the goal will be to make one another successful in your prayer ministry efforts. Here's number four. You want a team. You want to establish a relational bond that creates a teaming environment. Everybody needs to want to help the prayer leaders from sister churches to create a culture of prayer in their church, because when they're successful, you'll learn from their successes. Here's number five. You want to be invested and interested in one another. Refuse to let anybody fall off the wagon. You want to become your brother's keeper. The attitude that you want to have is that we're not successful until all of us are successful. We want to impact not just a local church. We want to impact a city, a denomination, a nation, and the world. Here's number six. You have to be non-controlling. If you're the mentor, know imposition of goals. Now, there are suggested goals, but each church, each prayer team sets their own goals. They have to advance at their own pace. Now, there is a process and there are principles, but the church learning team develops at their own pace, and the goal of the group is to assist each other, no matter if one group is racing forward and the other group is lagging behind. We'll unwrap the process at different paces, particularly through the first few formative years of the prayer ministry. Some will race forward, others will seem to lag behind for a season, and then they'll catch up and pass the others. Some will see initial growth and a setback, and all of you will learn from that process. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And number seven, you want to grow, and you want to grow together. You want to find ways for collaboration. You want to develop a culture where there's candid but edifying feedback. Iron sharpens iron. It may be times that you growl at one another in a loving kind of way. And then you pray together. And then you weep together. And then you rejoice together. Now, we've just spelled the word meeting. M-E-E-T-I-N-G. The mentoring meeting. M, it's about mutual learning. E, it's about exploring resources together. The second E, it's about encouraging one another. It's about developing a team attitude in that local church and then across the band of churches. It's about being interested in one another's success in non-controlling. We're not trying to manipulate or control one another. And then we're growing, praying churches together. Throughout the mentoring process, you have to keep the ground level. Everybody has to declare themselves a student, even the leader. There are no prayer experts. Without humility, the mentoring process will fail. The group won't develop a cohesiveness. It's the relational, and in the long run, it's that relational component that'll be the most important aspect of this newly formed group. The group, you will learn, is not about information. Some will come to the table looking for information. They may fall away. God, help that not to happen too often. No, this process is not about information. It's about formation. Pride isolates, it arrogates, it separates, it individuates. And those who practice that in the mentoring group will do the same thing in the church where they serve. You want to create a culture of mutual respect and humility. It's true that some will have a richer history and they'll have early success. They'll understand more about prayer and intercession. And you want to create a window for them to share with others the hows and whys of their early breakthroughs. But the spirit of sharing is just as important as the content that is shared. Humility is absolutely essential for transparency, and honesty is necessary for growth. So you'll learn quickly only a fool hides his sickness and symptoms from his doctor. And in a similar fashion, only a fool hides his ignorance. Every day, you and I learn more about prayer. We ought to discover ourselves a little dumber and a little more humble than the day before. As knowledge grows, so does the awareness of the littleness of our knowledge. Again, Hebrews says, we are to consider how to spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. That's what this mentoring process is all about. The word for stimulate in Hebrews means to catch a fever. That's a group function. You got to be around one another to catch a fever. So you want to cultivate a contagious passion for the prayer effort. Look at the mentoring group as a 30 to 36 month process. And during this time, we're going to walk together with one another in the launch of a fresh prayer effort in behalf of congregations that are at the table. Some may want to repeat the process. Some will be in a position to mentor others. Here are the phases that we're going to go through, and they're outlined in the Prayer Leaders Resource Manual. Number one, phase one, doing prayer. Here's what you want to encourage your churches to do. Project first and subsequently second and third year prayer activities. You want to encourage your congregations to do great days of prayer, first Sunday of every quarter. You want to encourage them to look at the fasting for His favor option in January. 2 million people fasting in America. Quite a phenomenon. Every January. You want to look at the Seek God for the City initiative during the season of the 40 days leading up to Palm Sunday. The Seek God for the City booklet. You want to look at the saturation prayer effort in September. And these are recommended, but each church chooses their own activities. Every church needs to be doing prayer. Number two, you want to encourage every church to have an envisioning evening for prayer. This is when they launch the process of finding the potential prayer leaders in that local church. They want to stretch the vision. They want to get them to re-examine their theology of prayer. Chances are it's too shallow. Their philosophy of prayer ministries, chances are it's too narrow. You want to look for the people who have passion but are still teachable. You want to get them into the same room and on to the same team. Number 3, here's what you're going to help that local church do. You're going to help them move from envisioning to learning about prayer and learning how to lead prayer. In this season, 6 to 8 months, you want to encourage every church to create a teachable culture among your leaders. So here's the deal. While you're meeting with local church prayer leaders, they're meeting together with one another, going through a process in this book, a curriculum, a 6-month curriculum to help them learn what it means to be a house of prayer for the nation. Videos are available on the website. Reproducible handouts are available here, discussion guides to help them. You're going to help them in that process. Number 4, you're going to help them move from learning to planning, projecting a multi-year plan. Here's what you'll have to do. You'll have to tether the zeal of the potential prayer team by first insisting that they learn, but that's not apart from the doing. Remember, they're doing first-year prayer activities, but they need a long-term plan. They don't need tactics. They don't need pieces. They need a systemic plan that shows how all the pieces fit together. Why they do prayer walking and how that relates to the growth of their intercession and what that does in prayer evangelism. You need a plan that pulls all the pieces together. Vision is the big picture. Strategy is the big picture plan. Tactics are the small pieces. You need to link personal transformation in prayer to institutional mission. Number 5, you want to help this team create not just a learning team, not a planning team, but now they're ready for a leadership team. Once you have a well thought out multi-year plan, you've helped those churches get to that stage. They've had a discovery team that's learned together, prayed together, explored together. Now they're ready to lead the prayer effort, and it'll take them a year to 18 months to get to that point. Your mentoring process is going to be critical to keep them on the wagon during the first and second year process. In the second and third years, they're going to do more varied prayer activities, but still, you're encouraging them to temper their efforts, to pace what they introduce, to gently stretch that congregational wineskin, to slowly steer the congregation away from me-centered praying to communion with God for the sheer pleasure of His presence, from petition exclusively for the self to include intercession for others. And you want to systematically introduce prayer, learning, and doing efforts that move you into this 4-dimensional model that we keep talking about. Number 6, persistence. You want to continue to walk together, the mentoring group with all these prayer leadership teams from various churches, exploring, learning, picking up the pieces after some failed attempt to take people into some new prayer experience, being disappointed that only 3 or 4 people showed up to do prayer walking after you'd spent a week talking about it. You want to encourage one another. All the while, new churches may be joining the mentoring group. They need the help of those who have already processed through components of their first year. In some cases, the group may multiply and form 2 groups, creating a cluster of mentoring groups. That's necessary to avoid groups becoming too large. And then, number 7, at some point, we'll move from mentoring to coaching. Mentoring is, well, we've defined it. It's letting people pace themselves and being there to help them and call out learning in the discovery process out of them. But coaching is more focused on techniques. It sets standards. A training regimen is required. Mentoring is about the relationship. Coaching is about mastering the process. Mentoring is about the possibilities. It's more person-focused. And that's where we are in this process. Richard Burr says, prayer is the launching pad of all ministry. And without it, we short-circuit God's chosen method of work. E.M. Bounds says, a little praying is a kind of salve for the conscience. It's a farce. It's a delusion. It's just enough to ease conviction. But it's not enough to engage real change. We want to stay at this process until we begin to see churches become houses of prayer for the nations.